Today, 4 living United States presidents, an absolute army of Hollywood A-listers, and tens of thousands of spectators are gathering on the south side of Chicago.
Right, for what has to be the most highly anticipated building opening of the decade.
Exactly. They are opening an $850 million presidential library today. But here's the wild part. It contains absolutely zero official presidential documents.
I mean, it really sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it?
It completely does.
You hear presidential library and you think, well, a massive monumental archive, but there are literally no actual archives inside of it.
Yeah, but that is exactly what is happening today, June 18th, 2026, at the grand opening of the Obama Presidential Center.
It's a huge day.
It is. We are looking at this sprawling 20-acre campus that basically dismantles everything we thought we knew about how a nation is supposed to memorialize its leaders.
Oh, for sure. They are entirely ditching those cold, silent marble columns.
Right. No dusty yellowing papers behind velvet ropes either.
Exactly. They're replacing all of that with a fully digital architecture. And get this, they have public charcoal grills, a sledding hill.
A sledding hill?
Yeah, a sledding hill. And a musical soundtrack for today's opening that honestly rivals the Grammy Awards.
It really is a profound departure from the traditional model.
It is. We're sort of moving from this concept of a library as just a passive repository of the past, right, to an active, highly produced experiential center of modern culture.
So to make sense of this massive cultural moment for you, our listener, we have pulled together a really huge stack of sources for today's deep dive.
All the ground to cover.
Oh, absolutely. We are looking at on-the-ground reporting from CBS News Chicago, Capital News Illinois, Newsday, and WHDH.
Plus, we've got the official architectural and programmatic updates straight from the Obama Foundation itself.
Right, but we are also pulling from TMZ celebrity coverage. Because, let's be real, you need that for this event.
Oh, totally. You cannot understand this event without the celebrity angle.
Exactly. And we're also digging deep into the viral, highly polarized social media discussions happening right now on platforms like Reddit.
Because you really can't understand the impact of this center by only looking at the blueprints.
No, not at all.
You have to look at the cultural footprint it's leaving on day one.
Which brings us to our mission for today. We need to figure out how this specific building completely reimagines the blueprint of the presidential library.
Right.
We're going to unpack the absolute spectacle of today's star-studded opening ceremony, which, trust me, was just wild to watch.
It really was something else.
We're also going to dissect the mechanics and, I guess, the psychology of their high-tech, digital-first approach to the museum's design.
And finally, we'll examine what this massive physical footprint actually means for the local Chicago community.
Yeah, and ultimately, what it means for how you as a citizen will consume modern political history moving forward.
Because the way we package history completely dictates how future generations understand it. And the package being presented today in Chicago is, well, it's heavily curated, it's wildly expensive, and deeply, deliberately integrated into pop culture.
So let's just start right there with that integration. Because the opening ceremony itself was basically a masterclass in cultural signaling.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you turned on the live stream expecting a local marching band, or a boring ribbon cutting with those giant novelty scissors.
Right, and a few dry, throat-clearing speeches about civic duty.
Exactly. If you expected that, you would have been entirely caught off guard. This event was anchored by Christina Aguilera, delivering a vocal performance that essentially shook the foundation of the newly built tower.
It was incredible, and the choice of Christina Aguilera and specifically the song she performed is incredibly telling.
Oh, yeah. She's saying, "What a Wonderful World," right?
She did. Which, of course, was made famous by Louis Armstrong back in 1967.
And TMZ was covering every single angle of this. She stepped out onto the stage in this incredibly striking, glittery, ruched dress.
She looked amazing.
She really looked every bit the pop icon. And she just unleashed her signature roof-raising vocal power on this classic ballad.
But you really have to look at who she is singing to.
Oh, the crowd, yeah.
The camera pans across the front row, and it's just this staggering concentration of global power.
It blew my mind.
Right. You have Barack Obama, Joe Biden, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton all sitting there.
4 U.S. presidents.
Yes, and sitting right next to them are Michelle Obama, Jill Biden, Laura Bush, and Hillary Clinton.
4 first ladies.
Exactly. And right there with them is Vice President Kamala Harris. And they're all just completely captivated, hanging on her every single note.
You really have to consider the semiotics of that visual.
Yeah.
I mean, what a wonderful world. was released in 1967, which was a year completely defined by the Vietnam War, massive civil rights protests, and just deep national division.
Right, it was a very dark time.
So Louis Armstrong's delivery of that song was really an act of defiant optimism in the face of all that chaos.
Wow, that's a great point.
So by having a modern pop powerhouse like Aguilera deliver that exact same message of defiant optimism, but to 4 generations of American executive leadership.
The organizers are creating a direct through line.
Exactly. A through line from the struggles of the 1960s to the political realities of today. It is a highly produced, highly effective piece of emotional engineering.
And Aguilera was just the anchor of a musical lineup that carried, honestly, a ridiculous amount of cultural weight.
It wasn't just a concert.
No, it was a carefully curated narrative of American music. You had U2's Bono and the Edge performing City of Blinding Lights.
Which, if you remember, was a massive staple of the 2008 Obama campaign rallies.
Oh, absolutely. And Bono, who, let's be honest, knows exactly how to work a crowd.
He really does.
He smoothly slipped the lyric Michelle Mabel right into the performance.
Oh, I love that. A direct nod to the Beatles, sung right to the former First Lady.
Right. And it establishes this immediate intimacy. It tells the audience and everyone watching at home that this isn't just a political rally.
Right, it's a gathering of friends.
Exactly. Friends who just happen to shape global culture.
The Matone chess, right. You have John Legend sitting completely alone at a Yamaha grand piano.
Delivering this beautiful rendition of the 1973 Donny Hathaway soul anthem, Someday We'll All Be Free.
And he doesn't stop there. He teams up with Common, and they are backed by the Uniting Voices Chicago Choir to perform Glory.
Their Academy Award-winning song from the 2014 film Selma.
Which is such a powerful choice.
It is. Placing Glory in this lineup anchors the entire $850 million campus directly in the continuum of Black American history.
It reminds the audience that the path to this presidential center runs directly through the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
It's a very heavy emotional anchor. But then they bring out Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder.
Right, changing genres again.
Yep. He performs an original song called Better Believe, but he doesn't bring his usual band.
Who did he bring?
He was joined on stage by Chicago teenagers from a local nonprofit group called Guitars Over Guns.
Oh, wow, that's a great local connection.
It is. And then you have Jennifer Hudson, a true Chicago native, standing there with just a piano to sing the national anthem.
Oh, her voice is just unreal.
And she transitions straight from that into The Impossible Dream from Man of La Mancha.
Wait, isn't that the exact same song she used to pay tribute to Muhammad Ali back in 2009?
It is. And again, look at the thematic resonance there. The impossible dream. The quest against insurmountable odds.
It's the exact narrative the Obamas have projected since the 2004 Democratic National Convention.
Exactly. The music is doing the heavy lifting of the political storytelling.
And it didn't even stop there. Mark Anthony comes out in this sharp navy blue suit and gets Vice President Harris swaying in the crowd with his 2013 hit, Vivir Mi Vida.
You had the massive Nigerian superstar Tems singing her 2024 hit, Me and You.
And The Roots, literally one of the greatest hip-hop bands in history, serving as the house band for the entire event.
Plus an appearance by actress Marsai Martin.
I mean, think about the breadth of demographics that lineup covers.
Right, you've got rock, soul, hip-hop, salsa, Afrobeats.
It is basically a demographic map of the coalition that elected Obama twice, perfectly mirrored in a musical set list.
But the audience wasn't just politicians either. And I think this is the part that really shifts this from a standard political event into something completely different.
Oh, the guest list was insane.
It was a massive deployment of Hollywood A-listers and cultural titans. Oprah Winfrey, Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg.
Late-night television royalty was out in force, too. David Letterman, Conan O'Brien, Stephen Colbert.
You had sports legends like Billie Jean King, and sprinkled in among all of them world leaders like former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
It represents a total fusion of the political establishment and the entertainment elite.
It really does.
I look at that crowd and I think of it as a cultural Super Bowl rather than a historical dedication.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But I have to ask you, is this convergence of pop culture and politics unique to the specific brand of the Obamas? Or are we looking at the new baseline here?
That's a fascinating question.
Like, if you are a future president, do you now need Steven Spielberg and Christina Aguilera to validate your legacy?
Well, it certainly sets a new and potentially unreachable standard.
Right.
The Obamas have always understood that political capital is fleeting, but cultural capital endures.
Yeah, from the very beginning.
Exactly. From the 2008 campaign, they didn't just use celebrities to raise money, they used them as a permission structure.
What do you mean by permission structure?
Well, when Oprah Winfrey endorsed Obama in 2007, she was signaling to millions of middle-class Americans that it was safe and even culturally essential to support him.
Ah, I see.
So what we are seeing today in Chicago is the ultimate crystallization of that strategy. It argues that a successful modern presidency isn't just about passing bills or managing the economy.
It is about permanently embedding yourself in the cultural zeitgeist.
Precise.
And the internet immediately recognized that. If you look at the viral threads on Reddit today, specifically in the /FOMOI subreddit,
Which is a massive hub for pop culture and celebrity gossip.
yeah, it's huge. Users there were completely marveling at this turnout. But they weren't just talking about the music. They were using the guest list as a weapon for partisan comparison.
Yes, the public reaction was intensely polarized, which is exactly what happens when you turn a historical monument into a pop culture event.
Right. And just to be clear for the listener, we're just observing the conversation here, keeping it completely impartial.
Of course.
But social media users were drawing direct, very stark comparisons between this massive, effortless turnout of A-list talent for Obama and the very public, documented struggles that former President Donald Trump has had in drawing similar high-profile entertainers to his own events.
Right, like his inaugurations and rallies over the years. And the reporting notes that former President Trump was actually not in attendance at today's ceremony.
It wasn't.
And back in February, he explicitly took to his social media platforms to dismiss the $850 million center, literally calling it a total disaster.
Which just proves that even the opening of a library is now a battleground for political polarization.
Oh, completely.
One Reddit user noted that a lot of serious artists have recently pulled out of performances related to the upcoming 250th American anniversary celebrations, yet they showed up in absolute droves for this specific event.
It's a striking contrast.
And another user made a joke about Vanilla Ice falling to his knees in a Walmart upon seeing the Obama lineup.
That's pretty funny.
It is funny, but it highlights a really serious point. The guest list is the message.
It proves that presidential libraries are no longer passive repositories. They are active, highly visible stages for ongoing cultural warfare and narrative control.
So the star power on that stage was blinding. But all of that music, all of those A-listers, were essentially an elaborate opening act for the building itself.
A building that completely shatters the mold of what a historical archive is supposed to be.
Let's dig into the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
Because the most shocking detail about this $850 million tower is that it is the very first fully digital presidential museum.
Right.
If you walk into this building expecting to see the official original paper records of the Obama administration, you will not find them.
Yeah.
There are absolutely no physical, official presidential documents on display.
And to understand how massive a shift this is, you really have to look at how the National Archives usually operates.
Yeah, explain the traditional setup.
Traditionally, when you visit the FDR Library or the Kennedy Library or the Bush Library, the core of the experience is the paper.
Right, the actual artifacts.
Exactly. You are looking at the actual yellowing drafts of speeches with the pre-evidence handwritten crossouts. You are looking at classified memos that have been declassified.
The physical weight of the bureaucracy is literally the point of the museum.
Yes. It's the feeling of, wow, Abraham Lincoln actually held this specific piece of paper.
But here, the Obama Foundation made a deliberate choice to digitize everything.
They did.
But I want to be clear for the listener, that doesn't mean the museum is just a bunch of iPads sitting on empty tables.
No, not at all.
The physical exhibits they do have are incredibly elaborate. They're just experiential rather than archival.
They have basically replaced the aura of the original document with the immersion of the replica.
Exactly. For example, visitors will walk into a stunning, life-size replica of the Oval Office.
Which is pretty standard for these museums, right?
It is, but unlike older museums where you just look at the room from behind a velvet rope, here they actively encourage you to walk right up and sit behind the Resolute desk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can open the top drawer of the desk, and inside they have placed a physical copy of the handwritten transition letter that George W. Bush left for Obama on his first day in office.
That's a great touch.
It is, and it sits right next to a replica of Obama's famously beloved BlackBerry phone.
I love that. And the Vice President of Public Engagement for the foundation, Josh Harris, actually explained the logic behind this.
What did he say?
He said they want people, specifically kids from the South Side, to physically sit behind that desk.
To really feel it.
Yes. The goal is experiential learning. It is designed to instill the belief that if a young community organizer from this very neighborhood can end up behind that desk, anyone can.
And the immersion goes way beyond politics, too. It leans heavily into culture and style.
Naturally.
Back in 2021, when President Obama spoke at the groundbreaking for this center, he joked that while the museum wouldn't just be a collection of Michelle's ball gowns, he knew perfectly well that everybody would come to see them.
And he was completely right.
He was. The fashion exhibits are a massive anchor for the museum.
Because fashion is a highly accessible entry point into history. It really grounds political eras in an aesthetic reality.
So they have roughly a dozen of the former First Lady's most iconic dresses displayed on mannequins behind glass.
Ooh.
This includes the famous black and red Narciso Rodriguez dress she wore on election night in Chicago back in 2008.
I remember that dress vividly.
Right. But here is the brilliant high-tech twist. Because you obviously can't touch the historical garments. They have installed a feature that allows visitors to touch exact fabric swatches that match the dresses.
Really?
Yeah. You can physically run your fingers over the texture of the rose gold chainmail from the Atelier Versace evening gown she wore at her final state dinner in 2016.
The psychology of that is just fascinating.
Isn't it?
Incorporating tactile elements like fabric swatches fundamentally alters how a human brain records a museum experience.
How so?
Well, haptic memory, the memory of touch, is incredibly powerful. By allowing visitors to feel the chainmail, the museum moves from a detached, purely visual observation into a sensory, personal interaction.
It literally shrinks the distance between the historical figure and the everyday citizen.
Exactly. And the architecture of the building itself is trying to tell that exact same story of connection.
Yeah, the main museum tower is shaped to depict four hands coming together in solidarity.
It's a very striking silhouette.
And wrapped around the exterior of the building, etched right into the facade, are these massive, 5-foot-tall concrete letters.
What do they say?
They spell out an excerpt from President Obama's 2015 speech in Selma, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights March. The excerpt begins with the phrase, "You are America."
They are literally etching a narrative of inclusion and civic duty into the concrete skyline of Chicago.
It's powerful.
It is. And inside, the digital and physical exhibits cover all the massive policy moments you would expect.
Like the passage of the Affordable Care Act.
Right, and the complexities of immigration policies, the intense timeline of the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, and the fight for marriage equality.
But they also dedicate significant space to the deeply emotional, unscripted moments that define the era.
Right, like the exhibit featuring a massive television screen playing the clip of President Obama unexpectedly singing Amazing Grace.
Oh, during his 2015 eulogy for the victims of the tragic church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes. Louise Bernard, the museum's director, noted that they intentionally designed the flow of the museum to include areas for quiet, personal reflection after moments like that.
She called it an invitation for people to bring change home.
Which is a beautiful sentiment.
It is, but hold on, I have to push back on this entire concept for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
We're talking about a presidential library. The literal receipts of history are supposed to live here.
Sure.
If the National Archives keeps all the original official documents somewhere else, and this $850 million physical space is entirely filled with digital screens, replicas of Blackberries, and touch swatches of dresses.
I see where you're going with this.
What are people actually paying to see? Aren't we just replacing the raw, unvarnished truth of historical artifacts with a highly curated, heavily produced theme park experience?
The tension between authenticity and curation is the central gamble of this entire project.
It's a big gamble.
You are basically asking if authenticity is located in the original piece of paper or if it is located in the emotional resonance of the experience.
Exactly.
The architects of this center are betting that a piece of paper behind glass does very little to educate or inspire a 14-year-old in the year 2026.
Which is probably true.
Right. They are betting that a fully immersive, interactive digital environment is a much more effective educational tool.
But it is a massive risk.
It is. It moves the concept of the presidential library away from the archive and entirely toward the experience.
And that focus on experience is exactly why the exhibits inside the tower are really only half the story.
Right. We have to talk about the outside.
While the museum focuses on the global stage, the actual footprint of the campus outside is fiercely, unapologetically dedicated to the local geography.
Which brings us to the most defining feature of this entire project, why this massive center is located on the south side of Chicago.
It cannot be overstated how unusual this location is.
No, it really is unique. Most presidential libraries are tucked away on quiet, manicured university campuses or in small, relatively isolated hometowns.
Right, like College Station or Grand Rapids.
Exactly. But this center is built right in Jackson Park, deeply embedded in a vibrant, complex, and historically significant urban environment.
Because this is where the story actually starts. This is where Barack Obama began his political career as a grassroots community organizer.
It is where he taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago.
And crucially, it is where Michelle Obama was born and raised.
And during the opening ceremony today, President Obama told a story that perfectly anchored this geographic choice.
Oh, the car story.
Yes. He talked about arriving in Chicago in 1985. He was a 23-year-old kid driving a car he had just bought in New York.
A car he explicitly described in his speech as janky.
I love that visual. A 23-year-old future president in a janky used car.
He said he had all his worldly possessions stuffed inside the trunk in the back seat, right? Piled so high that he couldn't even see out of the rearview mirror.
He literally joked that he was a driving safety hazard.
And the kicker to that story is the actual route he took.
Right, he drove down Cornell Drive.
Exactly. Right through the exact spot in Jackson Park where this massive, monumental presidential center now stands.
He was on his way to work as an organizer in the Altgeld Gardens public housing development.
A community that was reeling from the economic devastation of steel plant closings at the time.
So that narrative arc from a broke 23-year-old in a packed used car to a two-term president opening an $850 million center on the exact same street.
It is the foundational mythos of the entire campus.
It really is. And because of that specific background in community organizing, the features of this campus are entirely alien to the traditional museum model.
Oh, completely alien. This sprawling 20-acre footprint includes a 60,000 square foot athletic center called Home Court.
And inside Home Court is a professional-grade, glass-paneled basketball court.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
We all know the former president is famously obsessed with basketball.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But this isn't just a personal shrine for him to shoot hoops.
No, it is designed for active, daily community use.
It is programmed to host events run by local organizations like After School Matters.
Right, which has partnered directly with the foundation to bring local youth onto the campus.
And outside, there is a sledding hill for the Chicago winters.
There's a massive playground.
There is the Eleanor Roosevelt Fruit and Vegetable Garden.
Which was specifically designed by Michelle Obama, right?
Yes, to facilitate educational programs with the Chicago Botanic Garden, providing urban agriculture education to local schools.
And perhaps the most uniquely human touch on the entire campus: public charcoal grills.
Yes, barbecue grills at a presidential library.
Josh Harris from the foundation actually confirmed that this was a highly specific personal request from President Obama.
It reflects his own fond memories of grilling out in Chicago parks with his family before politics sort of took over their lives.
He apparently pitched the idea of having public grills during early community design meetings nearly a decade ago, and they made sure it happened.
The campus also houses a brand new branch of the Chicago Public Library.
And inside that branch is this breathtaking 70-foot mural depicting legendary literary figures like Walt Whitman and James Baldwin.
But the focal point of the mural is the Nobel Prize-winning author Toni Morrison.
Right, she is depicted reading a book to a young boy wearing an orange shirt.
And that young boy in the orange shirt is meant to represent a young Barack Obama.
So when you lay all of that out, the basketball court, the sledding hill, the community garden, the library branch, the charcoal grills, it sounds less like a monument to a presidency and more like a modern, heavily funded town square.
It does.
I want you to explain the sociology of this. How do features like a playground and barbecue grills fundamentally change the way everyday citizens interact with the concept of presidential history?
Well, it is a deliberate blurring of the lines between the sacred and the everyday.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Traditionally, a presidential monument is physically and psychologically separated from daily life. It sits on a pedestal. It commands awe and silence.
Right, you whisper when you walk through them.
Exactly. But by integrating a playground where kids are screaming and grills where families are cooking hot dogs, the Obama Foundation is arguing that civic engagement and historical reflection shouldn't be separated from everyday joy and community gathering.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It suggests that history isn't just a dry subject you study in a quiet room. It is the ground you walk on and the park you play in.
And that specific focus, prioritizing the living community over the static monument, wasn't just baked into the physical architecture.
No, it was the central driving thesis of the speeches delivered by the Obamas and their inner circle during the dedication ceremony today.
The rhetoric of the day was meticulously, carefully crafted to reinforce this idea of a living, breathing community hub.
Michelle Obama's speech was really the emotional core of the event.
It really was. She spoke directly to her husband in front of the world and praised him for surviving what she called 8 years in the crucible.
That's a very intense phrase.
She said, and I quote, "Not once did you melt in the heat. Not once did you let it harden you."
Wow.
She highlighted his stubborn optimism, his dazzling brilliance, and his unpretentious decency.
She also noted that he managed the hardest job in the world with such grace and class and cool, making it look like a walk in the park.
That word crucible is heavily loaded, though, isn't it?
It is. It acknowledges the intense political opposition, the birtherism, the gridlock, without dwelling on the negativity.
Right.
It frames his presidency as a trial of character that he survived completely intact. But she didn't just stay in the past. She immediately pivoted to the present social context.
Right. She explicitly warned the audience against falling into cynicism during what she described as our current anxious and divisive times.
She positioned this new center not just as a historical record of what they did, but as a respite from all that modern division.
She called it an active antidote to complacency.
And Valerie Jarrett, who is the CEO of the foundation and was one of Obama's longest-serving and closest advisors, hammered this exact point home.
What did she say?
She looked at the crowd and stated flat out, "This is not a monument to the Obamas."
Wow, just like that.
Just like that, she framed the entire project as a tribute to all the grassroots organizers, voters, and citizens who made their journey possible in the first place.
They even managed to inject a sense of self-referential humor into the history, which I loved.
Oh, yes. Martin Nesbitt, the chair of the Obama Foundation Board, gave his official remarks wearing a tan suit.
The infamous tan suit. I couldn't believe it.
That's a hilarious...
For the listener who might have somehow forgotten, back in 2014, President Obama wore a tan suit to a press conference discussing the military situation in Syria, and the media literally lost its collective mind.
It was days of breathless coverage about whether a tan suit was presidential.
So by wearing one today, Nesbitt is delivering a deliberate, joking nod to that absurd controversy.
Ooh. It is a brilliant rhetorical device. By joking about the tan suit, they are reclaiming their own history, even the absurd media-manufactured controversies, and signaling that they're totally comfortable with their legacy.
But I have to point out a glaring, almost uncomfortable contrast here.
Okay.
Inside the gates, you have these beautiful, high-minded speeches about a welcoming, open, porous community space.
Right.
But outside the gates, the reality of the environment is incredibly different.
That's very true.
While the A-listers were inside the theater, a massive free public watch party was happening on the Midway Plaisance.
Which is a brilliant historical site itself. The Midway Plaisance is a wide park connecting Jackson and Washington parks, and it was originally part of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition.
It is literally where the world's first Ferris wheel was constructed.
Exactly.
So you have tens of thousands of people gathered out there with a live DJ, local food vendors, and a massive jumbotron broadcasting the speeches.
Sounds like a great party.
It does. But this area was locked down with a level of security that is hard to even comprehend.
Oh, the security was intense.
James Morley, the acting special agent in charge for the Secret Service, described the security posture as being on par with a national political convention.
Wow.
We are talking miles of anti-scale fencing, heavily armed vehicle checkpoints, magnetometers at every single entrance, strict clear bag policies, and aerial drones providing constant overwatch.
Well, you really have to contextualize that security. We're living in a high-threat era.
Of course.
This event brought together 4 living U.S. presidents, the current vice president, dozens of global dignitaries, and the highest echelon of American celebrities into a densely populated urban center.
Right.
And this is occurring just days after the FBI publicly thwarted an alleged terrorist attack planned for a UFC event at the White House.
That's right, the UFC event plot.
The reality of domestic and international security threats makes a fortress-like approach absolutely non-negotiable for an event like this.
I totally understand the necessity, but look at the contradiction here. How does a facility balance being a massive, high-security target, requiring drones and magnetometers with its stated, core goal of being an accessible, relaxed neighborhood park where you can just walk up, push your kid on a swing, and grill a hot dog,
It's a huge paradox.
is the very concept of an open presidential library an inherent contradiction in modern America.
It is the defining operational challenge of the Obama Center.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the architectural philosophy demands a porous, welcoming boundary, the town square ideal we talked about. But the physical reality of the Secret Service and threat matrices demands rigid, heavily monitored perimeters.
Right.
Now, opening day is an anomaly. Security is artificially high because of the guest list.
Sure, 4 presidents will do that.
The true test of this campus won't be today. The true test will be a random Tuesday afternoon 3 years from now.
That's a good point.
Can a local family actually walk up from the neighborhood and use those charcoal grills without feeling like they are entering a TSA checkpoint? If the security apparatus alienates the neighborhood, the entire philosophical mission of the center completely fails.
And that tension between accessibility and exclusivity isn't just about physical security gates.
No, it's about finances, too.
Exactly. It brings us perfectly to the logistics of actually visiting this center and the broader, incredibly fierce debate among historians about how we fund, price, and curate presidential legacies in this country. Because access is also about cost.
And the price tag for entry into the Obama Presidential Center has generated a significant amount of friction and debate in the historiographical community.
Let's break down the actual cost of admission for the listener.
Okay.
If you want to walk inside the main museum tower, to see that Oval Office replica, to interact with the digital exhibits, and to feel the fabric swatches on the dresses, a standard adult ticket is $30.
Which makes it currently the most expensive U.S. presidential museum in the country.
By a decent margin. It surpasses the Richard Nixon Presidential Library in California, which previously held the top spot at $29.
Right.
To give you some local context in Chicago, tickets to the massive Griffin Museum of Science and Industry are about $26.
And if you drive down to Springfield, Illinois to see the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library, it only costs $15.
The leadership at the foundation, including Josh Harris, fiercely justify this $30 price point.
What's their primary argument?
They point to the sheer scale and quality of the facility. They argue that this is a state-of-the-art, $850 million technological marvel, and operating a facility of that caliber simply requires significant revenue.
They also heavily emphasize that while the tower costs money, the vast majority of the 20-acre campus is completely free and open to the public.
Right. You do not need to buy a $30 ticket to use the playground, the sledding hill, the basketball court, the grills, or the public library branch.
Even the very top floor observation deck of the museum tower, which offers these incredible panoramic views of the Chicago skyline and Lake Michigan, is completely free to the public.
And they also plan to offer free days and significant discounts for local Illinois residents.
But honestly, the debate over a $30 ticket is just the surface layer.
Let's dig deeper then.
It opens up a much deeper, more consequential debate about the privatization of public history. To understand this, you really have to understand the mechanics of the Presidential Records Act.
Walk us through how this actually works behind the scenes, because I think most people assume that when they walk into a presidential library, they are walking into a government-run, objective historical institution.
That is the illusion, but it is definitely not the reality.
Okay, so what is the reality?
Under the Presidential Records Act, the actual archival records the emails, the classified briefings, the daily schedules, the raw data of a presidency are legally owned and managed by the federal government through the National Archives and Records Administration.
Okay, NARA. NARA is the objective keeper of the data.
Exactly. However, the physical building, the museum, the exhibits, the narrative you walk through, the videos you watch, the artifacts chosen to be put under glass, that entire apparatus is funded and designed by private donors through the former president's personal foundation.
So to put it bluntly, private money dictates the public story.
Precisely. It is essentially an autobiography, ghost-written by your biggest fans and donors, but legally sanctioned to look like an objective history textbook.
That's a terrifying way to frame it.
And prominent historians like Douglas Brinkley, Max Boot, and Ted Widmer have been sounding the alarm about the risks this structure poses to our democratic memory.
Brinkley specifically pointed out how this bias manifests, didn't he?
He did. He noted that if you look at the Herbert Hoover Library, the framing heavily emphasizes the New Deal-style policies that Hoover proposed, trying to soften his legacy regarding the Great Depression.
Which is pretty self-serving.
Exactly. Max Boot, who is a highly respected historian and wrote a major biography of Ronald Reagan, noted that the Reagan Museum is essentially a temple to his achievements.
It heavily minimizes his failures.
Right. It glosses over controversies and crucially doesn't even allow critical biographies of Reagan to be sold in the museum gift shop.
Wow, not even in the gift shop.
Nope. But the most infamous example is the Richard Nixon Library.
Oh, I can only imagine how they handled Watergate.
Well, for years after it opened, its handling of the Watergate scandal was highly sanitized and extremely defensive.
I bet.
It caused a massive, years-long dispute with independent historians and the National Archives before the exhibits were eventually revamped to reflect the objective reality of the scandal.
The danger of the private foundation model is just so obvious. The donors are almost always loyalists, former staff members, or wealthy political supporters.
Right. They are heavily incentivized to produce a curated, sanitized version of history. It transforms the space from an objective analysis of an administration into a permanent public relations monument to a legacy.
Now, Ted Widmer did offer a counterpoint, noting that there has been a recent push for more transparency in these institutions.
He pointed to the Lyndon B. Johnson Library in Texas as the gold standard.
Oh, really? Why is that?
That museum actually confronts LBJ's disastrous handling of the Vietnam War head-on, and it even allows visitors to listen to raw, sometimes very controversial audio recordings of his phone calls.
But Widmer questions whether future libraries will actually follow LBJ's transparent model or if they'll just revert to the sanitized PR model.
Right.
And this is where I really have to push back hard on the Obama Center specifically. Think about the combination of factors here.
Okay, let's hear it.
This museum is entirely funded by private money. It cost a staggering $850 million to build. And, as we discussed, it is completely digital, meaning there are no raw, unedited paper documents for visitors to scrutinize for themselves.
That's a potent combination.
If you combine private money with infinitely editable digital screens, what is stopping this from just being the world's most expensive, highly effective PR campaign? How can you, as a citizen paying your $30, actually trust the history you are walking through?
It is the most critical question of the modern information age. And the honest answer is you shouldn't entirely trust it.
Let's be real here.
At least not as the singular objective truth. A presidential library, especially one driven by a private foundation, is by its very nature an autobiographical space.
It is the architectural manifestation of how that specific president wishes to be remembered by the future.
And the shift to a fully digital format at the Obama Center absolutely amplifies this risk.
Because a digital video or a touchscreen timeline can be easily updated, curated, smoothed out, and contextually shifted in a way that a physical piece of paper simply cannot.
Exactly. Historians argue that the true health of a democracy requires its citizens to study history as it actually happened, complete with the gridlock, the failures, and the ugly compromises.
Not just the polished, soaring rhetoric presented in a beautifully immersive theater.
So as a visitor, you really have to be an active consumer of history, not a passive one. You have to walk through those doors with your eyes wide open, knowing you are experiencing their narrative, their specific perspective on the timeline.
You have to be aware of the lens you're looking through.
Exactly. It is a vital, incredibly valuable piece of the historical record, but it is not the only piece. It is the thesis, but you still have to seek out the antithesis on your own.
Let's step back and look at the massive scope of what we have covered today.
It's a lot.
We started with an opening ceremony that completely blurred the lines between political memorialization and pop culture spectacle.
Anchored by Christina Aguilera and an unbelievable gathering of global power and celebrity.
We looked at the radical, highly controversial shift to a fully digital, interactive museum experience that prioritizes emotional immersion and tactile memory over physical archival documents.
We examined the deep, deliberate integration of the sprawling 20-acre campus into the physical and historical landscape of Chicago's South Side.
Fundamentally redefining the space as a living community hub equipped with basketball courts, libraries, and grills, rather than an isolated temple of history.
And we unpack the complex, inherent tensions of the project, the friction between the rhetoric of an open, welcoming community space and the reality of massive security perimeters.
And the ongoing vital debate about how private money, $30 admission fees, and digital curation actually shape our public understanding of history.
It is a remarkable, unprecedented synthesis of architecture, pop culture, and political legacy.
And it brings us back to you, the listener. Why does an $850 million campus in Chicago matter to you, regardless of whether you ever buy a ticket or walk through its doors?
Because the Obama Presidential Center is actively, aggressively shifting the paradigm of how we as a society remember the past.
It is attempting to turn history from a dusty book you read in silence into an active verb.
It is proposing that history is a place where you sweat on a basketball court, grill hot dogs with your neighbors, and listen to Christina Aguilera bring the house down while 4 presidents watch.
It is making the bold argument that a legacy is best preserved not in a secure vault, but in the ongoing daily actions of a community.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to mull over.
If the concept of the presidential library is evolving away from being a massive physical archive and turning into these decentralized, digital-first community centers, do we even need massive physical monuments for future presidents at all?
If the documents are all online and the exhibits are all digital screens, will the Presidential Library of the future simply be a highly curated, downloadable app on your phone paired with a financial endowment to maintain a few local community parks?
As technology completely replaces the archives, what happens to the architecture of our national memories? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.